Hey everybody, and welcome to Black Spring with Autumn. I hope that you survived the what some liberals might think of as an actual win from the impeachment last night. I will tag a little bit into to this session. I'd like to welcome everybody here on this December 19, 2019. And again, as always, if you're new joining me for the first time, I'd like to welcome you. I'm excited to have you here as well. But I just want to give you a little bit of an idea of where I am. I will say that I did watch a bit of the process yesterday, and I did watch a little bit of the votes as they were coming in. I can't say that I saw anything that I was surprised to see, but anyway, let's get going. All right, for everybody that's joining me here, I just want to say that I want to get into a bit of a story here. And I also want to say to everyone, please don't let low voter IQ happen to you. It can happen. And unfortunately it's going to happen to some, but for the majority of the patriots, it doesn't have to. So I just like to say, make sure that you do your part. And I do have a story for you today. And it comes from the New American. I also want to say that, and of course if you're here, I'm always happy to, hear from you, your comments while we're doing these streams. So you can always tag in at any time. So I just want to say this first and foremost. This is to anybody that's listening, if you're first time or second time around. But here in the U.S., I don't know if many people realize that if this country actually fails, where will we go? Where will we go? I mean, which one of these allies is going to come in and bail out the U.S. citizens from the tyranny from the people in their own government? It's not, I've heard somebody said something to me a long time ago, and it's a great point. I grew up hearing about, oh, the government's doing this and the government's doing that. Well, the government, like, who's the government? It consists of people. It's not some intangible or some abstract thing that we can't pinpoint. There are actually people in the government that make these decisions and that are making the rules. So you should just be aware of that. And so without more on that, I will keep going here. So of course I am bringing you a bit of the story. And I'm not sure if you guys remember the name Stacey Abrams. The title today is Process Matters, because we know that the process for the impeachment, the entire process of it was a sham. And even on the floor, I heard many congressmen basically wanting to kind of schmooze over the fact that that was not due process. And we've seen time and time again that the Democrats don't believe in due process. I mean, they play by a different set of rules regularly, but sometimes they don't even play by their own rules. In fact, to that end, the U.S. treaty with Ukraine, I don't know why that hasn't come up. That was an act that Bill Clinton coined, I think, back in 1991. And I haven't heard mention of that, because to me, that alone, if that wouldn't exonerate President Trump, there's nothing that would. So I digress. I'll keep going here, but I'd like for you to go with me here, if you will. there is, oops, sorry about that. Give me just 1 second here. I appreciate you guys for your patience. As always, I always love to hear from you guys. And please like, subscribe, share wherever available. And if you like it, you know, you can share it. And even if you don't like it, you can share it. And subscribe would be even better. And, you know, sometimes people subscribe even if they don't agree. You know, they just do it for perspective. And I'm totally fine with that here on this channel. So, if you would go with me to the New American, we do have a judge that basically gets the green light to purge voter rolls. And of course, Stacey Abrams was the gubernatorial candidate that ran against Brian Kemp in the state of Georgia, I think back in 2018. That was a very poignant year. And I do believe that some of the results of what we're seeing is because some people are very complacent. They just think that they can sit back and, oh, well, this voter process is going to take care of itself. And it's not. And I did emphasize, that I think that we're at a turning point in this country. And, there's a lot at stake here. It's of course, it's the First Amendment, the Second Amendment. If President Trump's rights can be trampled, can you imagine what would happen to us with no due process? Or if somebody can just come along and say that you're unfit to carry your whether it's your snub nose pistol or whether it's your AR, can you imagine what that would be like? But again, I digress. And I thank you again for tagging into this segment. So I just want to start really quickly. Now here, I'll paraphrase this and I'll read some of it in and out. Of course, you can read it for yourself. This comes from the TNA, the New American, which is a pretty, I think it's excellent. It's parented by the John Birch Society, and they've been around for 50 plus years, basically fighting for sovereignty, and we really should ramp it up. We should ramp it up more than ever. So I'm just saying, do your part where available. But in this case, we have a federal judge that has given Georgia the green light to move forward with a mass purge of its voter rolls that was scheduled for Monday. And of course, it's a great win for voter fraud. I'm paraphrasing that as well. And the U.S. District Judge Steve Jones set a hearing for later in the week to hear the arguments about the case, and he decided to let the state proceed with the purges after a state lawyer gave him the assurance that the judge later, if he found that the names that didn't, merit being removed, that they would be reinstated within 24 to 48 hours. Well, of course, enters Miss Abrams, which if you don't remember anything about it, which Miss Abrams did everything under the sun, much like Miss Clinton. She did not want to concede her loss on that gubernatorial race back in 2018. In fact, it was a process. All the votes were recounted, and just she would not concede. And later, she's been linked to Miss Clinton herself. So that's her mentor. So if you can go with that, you can work with that. So I just want to scroll down a bit here. And just right here, I'll start here in this section. This is in October, the Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, released a list of more than 313,000 voters with registrations at risk of being canceled. Nearly 4% of Georgia's total registered voters. Okay, and of course, here it is. This is their process. I guess in November, the state mailed out notifications to voters, giving them 30 days to respond to keep their registrations active. And the purge set to begin on Monday was announced last week by a spokesman for the Secretary of State's office. Okay, enters this group. Here's the opposition. But Fair Fight Action, a self-described voting rights group founded by former Democratic gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams. She filed an emergency request on Monday morning asking the court to halt the purge of some of the names. Okay, so we're going back to Jones first set the hearing for Fair Fight's request on Thursday and said the purge should be paused until that time. But later, he agreed to hold a Monday afternoon hearing at the request of the state. So I think, of course, there's two arguments. Of course, here's the other party. Brian Tyson, the lawyer representing the Secretary of State, explained to the judge that there is a narrow window for conducting voter maintenance because it cannot be done within 90 days of an election, which is why it's typically performed in off years. If the maintenance is not finished by later this month, 90 days before March 24th, presidential primaries, then it cannot be done until 2021, as 2020 has a 90-day period, has no 90-day period without an election. So here again, this is the process, and I would imagine that this is going to continue. She's probably going to consult with some more liberals or either Clinton herself to figure out how she can circumvent or get around things or protest. It's always the same thing. Like this is a housekeeping measure. It's housekeeping, but it's also a process. So that hence I thought I would name this particular stream, that the process matters, because even though it's a process, it just keeps things, you have a lot more clarity and a lot more transparency. And also, this lawyer Tyson, representing the state, explained to the judge, that if there are names that have been removed improperly, that they can be reinstated. And so he actually convinced Jones, the judge, to allow the purge to continue for the moment. And so, of course, here we go. You can read word for word yourself, but Fair Fight argues that 120,000 names are on the purge list solely because they have not voted or had any other statutorily defined contact with election officials in the past 7 years and have not responded to 2 notices seeking confirmation of their current address. So, here the thing is, this kind of goes back to also, your civic duties include voting, but it doesn't start on the day of voting. It doesn't start in the primaries, and it doesn't start during the general election. You have to get prepared. You have to be sure that you're actually registered for your specific state. You should probably go to your state or Google your state.gov and find out what that process is and how you can find out if you're actually registered and if it's current. Is your address current? What do they have you down for? I mean, no one can do, if everyone would just do what they know that they needed to do, I think there would be a lot fewer issues happening with the process overall. So there again, I'll wrap this one up quite a bit. If you have any comments, of course, let me know. And thank you for being here. But here's another quote. Quote, Georgians should not lose their right to vote simply because they have not expressed that right in recent elections. And in Georgia's practice of removing voters who have declined to participate in recent elections violates the U.S. Constitution, said the Fair Fight Action CEO Lauren Grobargle in a statement. And of course, the lawyers countering that the voters in question were put on an inactive list before the new law took effect. Okay, so here again, I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of cries for voter suppression, but has anyone ever wondered, why? What do you do these days that you don't need an ID for? I mean, if you go to a doctor, they ask for an ID to verify your address. I mean, if you go to a nightclub, whatever you do, you have to have an ID. I mean, maybe they should just have some official stand at the, if they want to, if they're really pro, anti-voter fraud or voter suppression rather, maybe they should have some official stand at the nightclubs and see how these people, see if they can get in based on their voter registration, or see how they're getting along. Are they being hassled for having to show their ID at a nightclub? I mean, at your job, you have to have ID in order to work. And it's just this new world that they want to create. It's really not going to go well. It's not, because this is a nation of laws. No matter what the globalists say, or what or what Abrams says, or what liberals say, they deconstruct everything, and they want a world of lawlessness, but actually they want it from more of a global standard. I mean, I heard all kinds of things yesterday about the people of New York, and then I heard that New Jersey, that they have a law that's allowing illegal aliens to have driver's licenses. I mean, what about the insurance? So how do you, if you don't have the proper documentation to be here in the country, how do you get drivers your auto insurance? How do you do that? I mean, it's just the standard is so hypocritical and such a double standard. I really don't know how anybody could still be voting for Democrats nationwide. I really don't. I mean, they're always plotting and calculating. But that's the thing about it. I have to give it to them. They always seem to stay a little bit ahead of what we're doing on the opposite side of the aisle. Not that they're perfect, but we have to be united in this whole process, and we have to be informed. And to me, we have an opportunity to make a statement, a huge statement in this 2020 election season. But it's not going to happen if people just sit back on their hands and remain complacent and indifferent about this country. We take so many things for granted here in this country. We just do, and we can't just give up the will to fight. We cannot give up those things. So there, I'm sorry, I'm going on a bit of a rant, but I would always be an advocate for civic literacy, and we don't have that. It's not in our schools. It's not in our, it's just not a part of our, it's spoken about, but it's not really taken very seriously. And you can see that. And I think that's why the force is so strong. We've conceded so much in our culture and our identity that's why we're fighting such a huge cultural and spiritual war, because we've conceded too much. We've taken our liberties for granted. And we've taken our kids, not that I have kids currently, but we've taken it all for granted. The propaganda education, propaganda ideas, ideologies. Now we have social protections to deal with. The kids can't even read a book without putting on those progressive sunglasses or progressive glasses to read the book. They can't show you the book in the pure form, the way it is in its natural form. They have to show it to you in the Marxist or the nihilist version, which they're basically just teaching people to be miserable. So here again, this article is here for you, but I thought this was pretty interesting, and it's very apropos to, we are in voter season. So, find out where your precinct is, and get to know the profiles of the candidates running in your area. Get to know what's on the ballot, what propositions are on the ballot, what acts are on the ballot, what taxes are on the ballot. I mean, our most powerful seat is the local or your city level. Of course, we have the top, but because it's so remote, it's not as powerful, and it's not as accessible as from the county seat or the city seat. So please, and for my listeners or viewers You know, process does matter, and it matters for us as patriots as well. So let me know, of course, if you're here. Even if you just want to make a comment, I'm always happy to hear from you guys. But I would like to thank you again for being here, and all the new people that may have shown up today. And I'd like to see you again on the next segment of Black Spring with Autumn.